Hi everybody, Terry Ryder from Hotspotting. Hope you're enjoying the holiday weekend. Just wanted to touch on one of the major features in the latest edition of the Ryder Report. This is our monthly newsletter to which you can subscribe, or which you get if you're a premium member of the Hotspotting information service. I was referring to the nature of media coverage of the property market and the tendency to generalise and talk about Australia as if it's a single market, which can be very misleading for people trying to make sense of what's going on in real estate around Australia, and particularly to identify the places where there are opportunities, where markets are actually rising, because we certainly don't have a single market or anything remotely like it. We actually have many thousands of different markets, all moving in different directions and all moving at different speeds, all doing their own thing, primarily dictated by local economic conditions. So the editorial section of the latest edition of the Ryder Report urges investors to not let shallow media coverage dictate their real estate decisions in 2018, because Australia's media is awash with poorly informed commentary on the housing market. A lot of it's Sydney-centric, a lot of it comes out of our biggest cities, a lot of it's from economists who are not real estate specialists or in any way expert. And I feel that real estate consumers are going to struggle to make sense of it this year because mainstream media has decided that the new recurring headline in the real estate pages is the market downturn, as they refer to it. Previously, the obsession was the Sydney property boom, and many ignorant journalists and other commentators extrapolated that across the nation to create the so-called Australian property boom, which I believe has never existed. Equally, there is no Australian market downturn in the offing. What we have is different markets doing different things. And recently, the Reserve Bank Governor Philip Lowe, speaking at an event in Sydney late last year, made the point that it was wrong to talk about the Australian property market as a single entity, referring to the disparity in performance amongst the nation's capital cities without even considering the different market scenarios playing out across regional Australia. But economists and other commentators continue to generalise about the nation and discuss real estate as a single market. But it's important to understand that's not the case. There's no doubt that the Sydney party has finished. Melbourne's still travelling strongly, but I expect there to be growing evidence as we get further into 2018 that particular party is past its peak and is going to be winding down as well. Well, we have other situations. Hobart is still raging, going ahead strongly. Canberra's really only just starting its run, and some forecasters with credentials believe that Canberra is going to lead on price growth in the next couple of years. Brisbane's shown only very minor growth to date, but we're expecting it to improve this year, particularly with the way the population trends are heading, and also taking into consideration the affordability equation when particularly investors from Sydney and Melbourne look at the relative affordability and the better rental yields in Brisbane. Similar for Adelaide. Adelaide showing improvement, and I expect price growth to be higher in Adelaide this year than it was last year and the last couple of years, in fact. While Perth is entering a recovery phase after 4 years of downturn, and there's strong evidence that that recovery is now underway and the Perth market is rising again and will almost certainly return to price growth this year. Darwin is the one city that remains stuck in the doldrums. It's still in downturn, and there's no sign yet of it starting to recover the way that Perth is doing so. And then we've got all different situations in regional Australia. We have some very, very strong markets, and 2017's probably the strongest price growth anywhere in Australia occurred in regional cities like Newcastle in New South Wales and Geelong in Victoria. And we expect regional markets to be very strong. Not all regional markets, but specific ones in specific parts of Australia are going to be very strong performers this year. In fact, the research that I've just completed for the Price Predict Index, the summer 2018 edition, which we will publish next week, we divide Australia into jurisdictions. A capital city is a jurisdiction, and the regional area for each state as another jurisdiction. And right now, the strongest jurisdiction in Australia is regional New South Wales. It's got a lot more growth markets than Sydney does. Regional Victoria's got more growth markets than Melbourne does, and regional Queensland has more growth markets right now than Brisbane does. So lots of strong situations evolving in the regional centres, but at the same time there are markets that are stagnating, and there's some that are still going backwards for various local reasons. So to do well in 2008, it's very important to understand that all these different scenarios are playing out, and you need to find the locations where the market is rising but hasn't yet shown major price growth to actually buy at the best value. One of the questions I'm often asked is now a good time to buy, and I usually reply by saying it's the wrong question. The right question is, where is it a good time to buy? Because there's always somewhere in Australia, given the many different markets across the country, there's always somewhere where it's a good and opportune time to be buying at good prices ahead of future growth. That's it for now. Terry Ryder from Hotspot Inc. Talk to you again soon.